I love my wife so much that, while she was away on a business trip, my kids and I decided to surprise her by flying to her. But then, I thought I knew what love was. Maybe I still did, or maybe I had just been fooling myself. Either way, that love had driven me to plan what I thought would be a perfect surprise. It was over breakfast when the idea struck me. Sophie was barely touching her cereal, swirling it in lazy circles. Max, already lost in his phone, was half listening to the world around him. Rachel had been gone for 3 days. For more to go, a full week apart. Way too long. Hey, what if we want to see Mom? I said, setting my coffee down. Sophie's eyes widened. Like, just show up? Yeah, we can book flights today. Be there tonight. Imagine her face. Max finally looked up. That'd be kinda cool. Which, from a 13-year-old, meant he was actually excited. That was all I needed. Within hours, we were packed, tickets booked, excitement buzzing through the air. I could already see it. Rachel opening her hotel door, gasping in shock before pulling us all into a hug, maybe even shedding a tear. We hadn't had a moment like that in years. But something nagged at me, a tiny splinter in the back of my mind. Rachel hadn't answered my call that morning. Not unusual, work trips were hectic. I texted her instead. Me. Hey, hope work's going okay. Just wanted to hear your voice. No response. An hour later, I tried again. Me. Kids miss you. Call when you can. Still nothing. I brushed it off. Flights were long. Meetings ran late. It was fine. Everything was fine. By the time we landed in Denver, the city was alive. Neon lights, honking cars, that crisp bite of mountain air that clung to your skin. The kids were buzzing. I rented a car, loaded them in, and plugged the hotel address into my GPS. As I drove, that itch in my chest grew. I told myself I wouldn't call her before we got there. I wanted this to be a pure surprise. But 5 minutes in the hotel, I caved. Dialed. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. Now the itch was burning. We pulled up to the hotel, and my stomach was a fist of tension. Still, I smiled for the kids. All right, you two wait in the lobby while I get our room keys. We're going to surprise her. We're going to jump out at her, right? Sophie asked, bouncing on her toes. Yeah, kiddo, I said, though my voice came out tight. I walked up to the check-in desk, forcing a grin. Hey, my wife is staying here. Rachel Evans. I wanted to surprise her. Could you tell me her room number? The receptionist smiled politely. I'm sorry, sir. We can't give out guest room numbers. Right. Privacy. Of course. I slid my credit card over. Could you at least call up and tell her husband's here? She nodded, picked up the phone. Dialed. Waited. Then her expression shifted. Oh, she said, her eyes flicking to me. She's not answering. My stomach twisted. Maybe she's asleep, I offered, because what was the alternative? That she was ignoring the call? The woman hesitated, glancing at her computer screen. It does say she checked in with a +1, though. The words didn't register at first. Sorry, what? Yeah. The room is under her name, but she listed an additional guest. I just assumed you knew. I stared at her. Then I laughed. A short, hollow sound that made the receptionist shift nervously. I wasn't even angry yet. No, this was the space before the explosion. The quiet, empty space where everything is too still, too sharp. Sir, she asked cautiously, who's the +1? My voice was steady. Too steady. I'm afraid I can't disclose that information. I exhaled through my nose. Right. Okay, then I need a room. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, avoiding my eyes. She knew. She knew exactly what this was. A minute later, I had a key card in my hand. Same floor as Rachel. Just a few doors down. Perfect. I walked back to the lobby, schooling my face into something that wouldn't alarm the kids. We're all set, I said, plastering on a smile. Let's drop our stuff off first. Sophie practically skipped beside me. Can we see Mommy right away? Soon, I promised. The room was nice. Clean. Unremarkable. But I barely saw it. I told the kids to get comfortable, order whatever they wanted from room service. Then I stepped into the hallway. Rachel's room was 4 doors down. My pulse hammered as I walked. What was I about to see? A work friend crashing in her room? A perfectly innocent explanation? Or something else? I reached room 814. My hand hovered over the door. Then I knocked. No answer. Knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone. Me. Hey, I'm at your hotel. Open the door. Read. No reply. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. My stomach was a lead weight. Then, before I could think, I turned and marched back downstairs. The receptionist looked up, surprised. Hey, I said, sliding my keycard across the counter. I locked myself out. Can I get a new one? She nodded, typing away. And then, casually, I added, oh, and could you add my wife's room to my key? We always do that when she travels, just in case. I smiled like a man who wasn't about to set his entire marriage on fire. She hesitated. Then, beep, she swiped my card, tapped a few keys, and handed it back. All set. Thanks. I turned and walked back upstairs. Back to room 814. The key card burned in my palm. My pulse wasn't just pounding now. It was roaring in my ears. This was it. If I was wrong, I'd look like a lunatic. If I was right, I slid the key card in. Beep. The green light blinked. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The door swung open, and for a moment, everything was still, the kind of stillness that comes right before disaster, when the world holds its breath. The first thing that hit me was a smell, a mix of cologne, sweat, and something unspoken. The kind of scent that didn't belong in a room where my wife was supposed to be alone. Rachel was tangled in the sheets, her bare shoulders illuminated by the dim glow of the bedside lamp. And next to her, some man I didn't recognize was just beginning to stir, rubbing his eyes, still half asleep. My vision tunneled. My pulse roared in my ears. Rachel's eyes met mine, and for the briefest second, I saw it. Annoyance. Not guilt, not regret. Just frustration, like I was the problem. Like I had ruined her night. She gasped, scrambling to pull the sheets around her. Nick! I held up a hand, stopping her. Don't. Just don't. The man beside her was fully awake now, looking between us, confusion morphing into panic. Whoa! Man, I didn't know she was married, he stammered, hands up like I had a gun pointed at him. Rachel whipped around. Ethan, shut up. Ethan. His name was Ethan. That detail hit me like a hammer to the ribs. I exhaled slowly, stepping further into the room. How long? Rachel swallowed hard, eyes darting anywhere but at me. Nick, I can explain. How? Long. She hesitated for half a second too long. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Jesus Christ. That told me everything I needed to know. My hands curled into fists, but I kept my voice eerily calm. The kids are in the hotel. Rachel. Sophie and Max. We flew here to surprise you. Her face paled. You brought the kids? I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Yeah, because I thought you'd be happy to see us. Because I actually believed you when you said this trip was for work. She closed her eyes like she could make this all disappear. Nick, please. Ethan, to his credit, had the sense to start dressing. Look, man, I had no idea. I don't give a damn what you knew. I cut him off, my voice like steel. Get out. He grabbed his things and bolted without another word. I turned back to Rachel, my wife of 14 years, the mother of my children, the woman who had just obliterated our life together in a cheap hotel room. Was it worth it? I asked, my voice quieter now, almost deadly. Tears welled in her eyes. Nick, I never meant for it to get this far. But it did. She opened her mouth, then closed it, because there was nothing left to say. I took a step back, shaking my head. Pack your things, Rachel. We're going home. She hesitated. Nick! Now. I walked out before she could argue, before I could break down, before I could do something I'd regret. Because at that moment, I wasn't the man I used to be. I was something else. Something new. something furious. The hotel room door clicked shut behind me. But the moment felt unreal, like I had stepped out of my own life and into someone else's nightmare. My legs moved on autopilot down the hallway, my mind lagging behind, drowning in static. My heart wasn't just beating, it was hammering against my ribs, a constant reminder that I was still alive, even though everything inside me felt dead. 4 doors down. That's all that separated my children from the disaster I had just walked away from. My hands clenched into fists as I tried to steady my breathing. I had to be calm. For them. I swiped my key card and stepped inside. Sophie looked up from the bed, a wide smile on her face. Did we surprise Mommy? The words knocked the air out of my lungs. Max, slouched in a chair by the window, barely looked up from his phone. He was older, wiser. He knew something was wrong. I forced a smile for Sophie's sake. She was busy, sweetheart. We'll see her later. Sophie pouted but didn't argue. Did she cry? I bet she cried. She cries at those dog commercials all the time. I swallowed hard. Not yet, baby. Max's eyes flicked to mine, his expression unreadable. He was sharp, always had been. I could see the questions building in his head, the puzzle pieces shifting into place. He wasn't going to ask in front of his sister. But he knew. He damn well knew. I couldn't stay here. Hey, I said, forcing my voice into something light. What do you guys say we go out? Get some ice cream, walk around the city a little before bed? Sophie gasped. Can I get 3 scoops? I managed a real smile this time. You can get 4. Max didn't react right away. He just studied me, those sharp eyes scanning my face. Then, after a moment, he gave a slow nod. Yeah, let's go. The streets of Denver were alive that night, buzzing with a different kind of energy than the one rattling inside me. I let Sophie pick the ice cream shop, a tiny hole-in-the-wall place with neon signs and a menu written in chalk. She got something rainbow-colored with extra sprinkles. Max went for chocolate fudge. I ordered something random. I didn't care. We sat by the window, watching the city move around us. Sophie talked nonstop about her friends, about how excited she was to see Mom, about the dog she wanted for Christmas. Max barely touched his ice cream. He kept his eyes on me. Then my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. Rachel. Max's gaze flicked down to the screen, then back up to me. He knew, but he didn't say anything. I silenced the phone and slid it into my pocket. Rachel didn't get to ask where we were. Not now. Not after what I had just seen. Sophie yawned, her head resting against my arm. Daddy, I'm sleepy. All right, kiddo. Let's get you back to bed. Max stood without a word. By the time we got back to the hotel, my mind was made up. We weren't staying. Not for another night. Not in a place that smelled like betrayal. I waited until Sophie was tucked in, breathing softly in the bed, before I turned to Max. Pack your things, I said quietly. He didn't even ask why. He just nodded and grabbed his bag. I booked the earliest flight out, one way, no return. By the time we reached the airport, the weight pressing down on my chest had settled into something colder, heavier. It was over. The life I had known was gone. Sophie stretched in her seat. Mommy's coming home after us, right? I forced myself to breathe. I don't know, baby. Max, ever the realist, snorted under his breath. She won't. I gave him a warning look, but he just shook his head. She didn't care we were here. Dad. She didn't even ask to see us. I clenched my jaw. He was right. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. Sophie blinked up at me. But Mommy still loves us, right? I swallowed past a lump in my throat. Of course she does. That part was true. But love wasn't enough. Not anymore. The flight was quiet. Sophie curled up against me, fast asleep. Max stared out the window, lost in thought. And me? I just sat there, staring at nothing, knowing that the moment we landed, I'd have to start over. The plane touched down with a soft jolt, but the impact barely registered. My mind was miles away, stuck in the wreckage of the past 24 hours. Sophie stirred beside me, stretching with a yawn. Are we home now? Home. The word felt foreign. What was home now? The house we left behind? The life that had been burned down in a dimly lit hotel room? Yeah, baby, I said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We're home. Max didn't say a word. He unbuckled his seatbelt and grabbed his backpack, his expression unreadable. I knew better than to push him. We moved through the airport in silence. Sophie chattered about the ice cream, about wanting to tell Mom all about our trip. I nodded when I had to, hummed in response, but my mind was elsewhere. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, still powered down. Rachel hadn't tried to reach out since the last call I ignored. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. I rented a car, packed the kids in, and started the drive home. The city lights faded behind us, replaced by the quiet stretch of highway. Every mile felt heavier than the last. By the time we pulled into the driveway, the weight of reality had settled in. The house looked the same, but everything inside it had changed. Sophie kicked off her shoes and ran straight to the living room, dropping onto the couch like she never left. Max lingered near the door, watching me with careful eyes. "You're really going to do it, aren't you?" he asked. I met his gaze. "Do what?" "Divorce Mom." The words were blunt, but there was no malice in them, just quiet understanding. I exhaled. "Yeah, I am." Max nodded slowly, like he had already made peace with it. Maybe he had. Good. I didn't expect that. You think so? "She didn't even fight for us," he muttered, shaking his head. "She didn't even try." That hit me like a punch to the ribs, because he was right. I ran a hand through my hair, sighing, "Get some rest, kid. We'll talk more tomorrow." Max didn't argue. He just turned and headed upstairs, leaving me alone in the hollow silence of our home. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over. The betrayal, the confrontation, the way Rachel had looked at me, not with guilt, not with regret, but with annoyance. I had spent years loving a woman who had stopped loving me a long time ago. Maybe I had seen it coming and just ignored the signs. Maybe I had hoped if I worked harder, if I was patient, she would come back to me. But she wouldn't. She never would. At some point in the night, I sat up and powered on my phone. A flood of unread messages appeared, all from Rachel. The last one was short. "Rachel, we need to talk." I stared at it for a long time before setting the phone back down. She was right. We didn't need to talk. Just not in the way she wanted. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Sophie humming in the kitchen. I found her sitting at the counter, a pile of crayons scattered in front of her. "What you working on, kiddo?" "A card for Mommy." She grinned, holding it up. It was covered in hearts and messy handwriting. "I love you, Mommy. Come home soon." My throat tightened. I forced a smile. "That's beautiful, baby." She beamed. "Can we go see her today?" I hesitated. How did I tell my daughter the truth? That her mother wasn't coming back? That the woman she idolized had shattered our family for the sake of a fleeting thrill? Not yet. "Mom's busy right now, sweetheart," I said carefully. "We'll see her soon." Sophie accepted that easily, turning back to her drawing. But Max, who had just walked into the kitchen, wasn't fooled. He sat down across from me, watching as I poured myself a cup of coffee. "You gonna call her?" I took a slow sip. "Yeah." "When?" I met his gaze. "Today." Max nodded. "Good." I called Rachel that afternoon. The conversation was short. Sharp. "I'm filing." I told her before she could get a word in. "I'll make sure the kids are taken care of, and we can figure out visitation. But we're done." She sputtered. "Nick, wait." "There's nothing left to talk about, Rachel." A long silence stretched between us. Then, finally, she sighed. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah? Well, you did." Another pause. Then, softer, "What about the kids?" "They're fine, but they deserve better than this." She exhaled shakily. "Can I see them?" I hesitated. "I'll figure something out." It was the best I could give her. And with that, I hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time, waiting for the weight in my chest to lessen. It didn't. But something else has settled in its place. Acceptance. It was over. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was okay with that. The sun was barely rising when I stepped outside, the morning air crisp against my skin. It had been a long night, a night of silence, of staring at the ceiling, of thinking about what came next. Max and Sophie were still asleep upstairs, their worlds blissfully untouched by the weight pressing down on me. Rachel had called twice since I hung up on her. I hadn't answered. The divorce papers would be filed today. I had already spoken to a lawyer. The process was straightforward, but the emotions were anything but. There was no salvaging what was broken, and I had no desire to try. For years, I had held on, convinced that if I worked hard enough, fought hard enough, I could fix things. But love isn't supposed to be a war, and a marriage isn't supposed to feel like a battlefield. I took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, letting the cool air clear my thoughts. It was time to rebuild. For me, for the kids. By the time Sophie woke up, her usual energy filled the house. She ran into the kitchen, eyes still groggy but bright. "Daddy, can we go to the park today?" I forced a smile. "Of course, kiddo." Max walked in a moment later, his expression careful. He wasn't a child anymore. He had seen too much in the last few days, and I hated that for him. He sat down at the table, crossing his arms. "So what happens now?" I met his gaze. "Now, we move forward." His jaw tightened and he nodded. Good. There was nothing else to say. The park was nearly empty when we arrived. Sophie ran straight for the swings, her laughter breaking through the quiet. Max sat beside me on the bench, watching her. "She doesn't get it yet," he said after a while. "She still thinks Mom's coming home." I sighed. "I know. She's going to be crushed when she figures it out." I looked at him, his young face lined with something that didn't belong to a kid his age. "And you?" He shrugged. "I'm already there." I felt that one like a punch to the chest. Later that evening, after dinner, Sophie curled up on the couch beside me, her head resting on my arm. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby?" She yawned. "Do you think Mommy still loves us?" I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "Yeah, sweetheart, she does." She considered that for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." Max, sitting on the other end of the couch, met my eyes. He didn't believe it. Maybe I didn't either. But for Sophie, it was the truth she needed for now. And that was enough. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, I finally picked up my phone. I texted Rachel. "We need to figure out a schedule for the kids." A minute later, the dots appeared. Then, "Rachel, okay, that was it. No long-winded explanations. No desperate pleas. Just one word. Okay." I put the phone down and exhaled. It wasn't closure, not yet, but it was a step, and for now that was enough.